over the next hour or so, you'll hear about the Waters of Life integrated project and other plans and programmes which aim to improve our natural environment. There are a few changes to the lineup this morning. Dr. Bernie White is going to be presenting on the Blue Dot programme in place of Dr. Cormac McConaughey, who's currently out catching little creatures in a stream for some of you to view later on. And due to a technical hitch, David Marshall from the Natural Courses Project, another Life IP project in England, won't be joining us either today, but will be involved in the project in the future. So we're delighted to be joined today by Malcolm Noonan TD, Minister of State for Heritage and Electoral Reform at the Department of Housing, Local Government and Heritage. That's a little bit of a mouthful. And Minister Noonan is going to officially launch the Waters of Life project for us today. I'll hand over to you, Minister.
It's great to be here in Kilmallock. I see my Oireachtas colleague Donagh here as well, but everybody, it's fantastic to be here. We had a lovely event here last night, Anne, wasn't it? It was really, really beautiful. So, and Kilmallock is a beautiful, beautiful town. Just, I didn't know it was a walled town. It's really quite a special place, and a really important launch here today for the Waters of Life project. But before I go into the main speech, just to say a few words just on the music that we had last night, because it's all connected to what we're trying to achieve with our waters and that spiritual connection with our waterways, our rivers. And it was beautiful music. We were taken on a journey from the River Liffey, from Tommy Potts, the Liffey Banks, right through to Aherlow, Tommy Peoples, and down to Slieve Lucra, and down to the shore with Liam Clancy, and finished up on the banks of the Lee with some beautiful testimonials, I suppose, but stories that were gathered by Lawpro as well, and that really amazing puppetry. It was just very, very special, and thanks so much for putting that on. But to me, it put a lovely context on this morning as well, because obviously we have the formalities to take place in launching this event. But I do think that with us and throughout this project, Anne, I know you're deeply connected to that spiritual element of what we're trying to achieve. Yes, absolutely, the good water quality and getting us to a high status water quality across our waters, I think is critically important. But it's also the human, the spiritual, the culture, and the social dimension of our waters that I think we can't do this in isolation. So again, thanks for that. It was a really, really special evening. And I just want to start by extending my sincere thanks to everyone involved in this really exciting project to protect and restore our most precious and vulnerable rivers, not least the many partners who are supporting this project. And I know that a lot of you are here in the room today. We've met on occasion across the last number of months as well. Your collective efforts over many months and indeed years, because I think this started back in 2018, as far as I've been told, Donald Grant and others were involved, have brought us to this milestone moment for the future of pristine catchments in Ireland. And I'm genuinely excited at what the project will mean for water quality and for biodiversity in some of our most sensitive freshwater habitats. It's a really significant and vital endeavour. For anyone here who may not be aware, the LIFE programme is the EU funding instrument for the environment and climate action. And since its creation in 1992, it has co-financed some 4,600 projects across the EU with a total contribution of approximately €6.5 billion to protect the environment and climate. Integrated projects such as Waters of Life are strategic projects supporting EU member states to achieve full implementation of strategies or action plans required by the EU environmental and climate legislation. And Ireland's River Basin Management Plan is one such plan. Integrated projects are implemented at a national or regional scales involving relevant authorities and very significant budgets from several EU and national sources, lasting for 6 to 10 years on average. So they're good extended projects. The focus on Waters of Life is the protection and restoration of our high status objective rivers, and such rivers are or should be in close to pristine conditions. Such rivers are a precious resource and serve as reservoirs of biodiversity and support a range of endangered species. Ireland is amongst a small number of EU member states who still have a significant number of those high status water bodies remaining, but we have been losing them at a really alarming rate. The percentage of monitoring sites at a high status has declined from 31.5% in the late 1980s to about 19% in the latest monitoring cycle, and that's a really alarming decline. The ongoing loss of our high status waters and the need to protect and restore them is a priority for this government, and I personally feel that it is an urgent and indeed a moral obligation. The Blue Dot Catchments Programme, which we'll hear more about later this morning, was established in 2018. Its formation was led by the Local Authorities Waters Programme with the aim of protecting and enhancing high status waters, many of which are located in headwaters in upland areas. This programme is intended to deliver multiple benefits, including awareness building and education regarding pressures, the initiation of small-scale projects within communities, and the improvement of water quality and biodiversity. In support of the Blue Dot Catchment Programme, an application was made under funding under the EU LIFE programme, and in 2020 the EU Commission awarded LIFE co-funding to the Department for the Waters of Life project. The project, which has a total of 16 partners, including government departments, state agencies and local development companies, has an overall budget of €20 million and will aim to provide us with the tools to reverse the long-term trend of decline in the number of high-status river sites. The project will run until 2028 and will be implemented across 6 high-status objective river catchments comprising a mixture of land use activities typical of such catchments. Each catchment will be approximately 100 kilometres squared in area. A number of catchments have been shortlisted for inclusion in the project, and you will hear more about these later this morning. The catchments have been chosen to allow the primary pressures acting on high-status rivers to be explored, and these are hydromorphology, which relates to the form and flow of a river, forestry, agriculture and wastewater. It is important that the Waters of Life project adds value to other plans and programmes and avoids duplication. To this end, the catchments in which results-based agricultural payment scheme have been implemented will be selected from those lying outside of the cooperation project areas identified in the draft CAP Strategic Plan for Ireland. And this is because an enhanced suite of agri-environmental and climate measures targeting water quality as well as protected species and habitats will be introduced in these areas under the plan. Important questions related to the management of forestry and catchments of high-status rivers will also be explored through the project. In this regard, 2 high-status objective catchments where significant forestry activity is planned during the life of the project have been chosen in consultation with the Forest Service and with Coillte. Key objectives of the project will be to improve our understanding of the drivers of status change in these types of rivers, which are very sensitive to even minor changes within the catchments. Enhance public appreciation of the ecology, ecosystems and natural capital value of high-status waters catchments. Develop locally tailored solutions in close consultation with local landowners and other members of the community. And this will include development of a results-based agricultural payment scheme which will be implemented in 3 of the 6 catchments, and ultimately to make recommendations that will inform the development of future agri-environment and forestry policies and provide for the long-term sustainable management of high-status areas. The Waters of Life represents an exciting opportunity to work together in a spirit of inquiry, of collaboration and co-creation to achieve these important objectives. In my time as Minister, and indeed during my many years of community and environmental work, I have always found these principles to be at the heart of the most successful projects, and I commend the Waters of Life team for emphasising this approach so strongly. All of you have been invited here today because you have a role to play, an active role to play in achieving these objectives, be it through direct involvement with the project, leveraging complementary funding to extend the range of the project actions to your areas, or promoting the benefits of our high-status water bodies. So just wish to conclude by thanking Anne, thanking everyone. There's a great, exciting time ahead through the Waters of Life project, and I look forward to seeing it evolve and develop. These LIFE projects across the country, I know a number of the projects are represented here today. They're hugely important as we try and achieve our water, climate and biodiversity objectives. And there's a great challenge ahead of us, there's no doubt. But there's also a huge opportunity to collaborate, to work together and to learn from each other and to learn as we go, because I think that's something that is we don't have all the answers. And I think it's critically important we learn as we go with these projects. And I think that's how this will evolve, I'm sure, Anne, over the next number of years. So I'm very excited about it. And as I said, it's just wonderful to be in Kilmallock, all framed by the beautiful music last night. It has put my head into a spin thinking about the amazing opportunities out of this project. But I'm looking forward to the rest of the presentations this morning. And just the one other thing I have to say is that the watersoflife.ie is the website is live from today, so you can check it out and look it up. So, Gordon, there.
Thank you, Minister Noonan, for that very inspiring introduction and launch of the project. Our next speaker is Anne Burrell, who's the Head of Life Environment with the European Commission. Anne couldn't be with us here today, but she's going to join us by video.
I'm very pleased to be with you remotely now. I wish I could be with you there in person. It sounds like you have a really wonderful program set up and that you'll be able to launch your new project with lots of energy and enthusiasm. As you can see on the screen, my name is Anne Burrell. I'm the head of the Life Environment Unit in the SENEA agency. We're the ones who manage and implement the LIFE program. So I wanted to take a few minutes just to give you the context and tell you a bit about the program itself. As you all probably know, the LIFE program is the EU's program for environment and climate. It's not a new program. We've been around already for almost 30 years now. We'll be celebrating our 30th anniversary. And all along, the objective has been the same, and that's to provide dedicated support to environment and climate objectives in the EU. We are fully in line with the European Green Deal. And that's in fact why we're implemented in the SENEA agency, because SENEA is the EU's agency for climate, environment, and also infrastructure. But we are the Green Deal agency. So as you can see, the LIFE program that we're in now is a program from 2021 to 2027. It's not really very different from the previous programs. The program has evolved a bit over our 30 years. The main evolution in this new program is that we now have also a clean energy transition sub-program. That's our latest member of the family. But we continue to have sub-programs and projects on nature and biodiversity, circular economy and quality of life, and also on climate mitigation and adaptation. We have quite a small budget. You see up in the corner, it's 5.43 billion euro for the 7 years. But with that money, we try to have a big impact. We try to make a difference on the ground. And we try particularly to finance projects which we think can be a catalyst or serve as a model for broader action. Our projects, you can see in the blue part of the slide, tend to develop and demonstrate innovative techniques and approaches to better managing our environment. We try to help with the implementation and enforcement of plans and strategies that are required under EU legislation. We certainly promote best practice and we aim for behavioral changes. And certainly we hope to catalyze a wider, broader deployment of the successful solutions that we're able to pay for under LIFE. Our beneficiaries come from all parts of society. We have about an equal division between private enterprises, NGOs, and public authorities. In fact, any legal entity can apply for a LIFE grant. If you want to focus in a little more on what we're talking about today, your water project, you'll see that it's financed under the Circular Economy and Quality of Life sub-program. Under this same sub-program, we finance projects indeed related to circular economy, but also to the good quality of our air, of our soil, of our water. And we look at coastal environment, we look at urban environment, and we try in all of these areas to try to support the demonstration of technologies and solutions that will help improve the environmental status. We do provide a lot of support to some of our projects on actually moving from demonstration up to be ready to join the market. At the same time, many of our projects are providing support to public authorities and other stakeholders. We aim, in addition, as I've already said, to promote upscaling, but also to ensure access to finance. This slide shows you the different types of finance that we provide. Now, this is the terminology that's used in the current program. For those of you who perhaps know LIFE a little bit longer, you're used to some slightly different words and names, but in effect, it's more or less the same type of actions. We have what we are called the standard action projects. These were previously known as the traditional projects. They're really the heart of the LIFE program. They're the grants that can be proposed in a very wide range of subject areas in the field of environment and climate. They're projects that aim to make a difference on the ground, do something possibly new and different, but at least to show how to do something, even if it's already a known best practice, in a new, better way, or engaging better with stakeholders, or somehow advancing the way we think about managing our environment. In addition, we have strategic nature projects and strategic integrated projects. These are what under the previous program were called integrated projects. I'll talk a little bit more on the next slide about strategic integrated projects, because that's in fact what your project is. In addition, we have some technical assistance grants. These are specifically for the preparation of applications for strategic nature projects or strategic integrated projects. And then we have a number of other types of actions that we finance, including, for instance, this year we're going to be setting up a project for the network of the national contact points for LIFE across the EU. We also finance some very specific targeted projects for which there's a dedicated call to respond to an urgent policy need. In addition, we have a separate call for operating grants for NGOs. So many different types of projects, but always with this aim of supporting the environment and climate in the EU. So turning specifically to the strategic projects, or as they were known in the past, the integrated projects, these, like the project you're about to kick off, are projects that aim to support the authorities in the EU member states to implement key strategies and plans under key pieces of environmental legislation. The goal is actually to catalyze a process that will lead ultimately to the full implementation of whatever the target plan is. It's possible to submit applications for strategic projects in quite a number of different areas. You have some of them listed up here on the screen. In addition, now it's also possible to submit applications for strategic projects in the area of circular economy, and perhaps a little closer to your project, also in flood management or marine strategy plans under the Marine Strategy Framework Directive. But indeed, the project you have corresponds to the category of strategic integrated projects for river basin management plans. So the aim of such projects as yours is to contribute to the ultimate full implementation of a river basin management plan as required by the EU's Water Framework Directive. I've told you a bit about LIFE, but obviously you're really here to talk about your project that you're kicking off. And I think your project is a very good example of the good things that LIFE can do. It's important. We think all of our projects are important, but particularly I would say our strategic projects, our integrated projects, because you're making a difference over a large area. In your case, you're tackling a whole river basin catchment, and you're working to try to improve the quality of that river basin management, but also contributing to the broader vision for Ireland's water quality effort and for elaborating measures for future river basin management plans. What's important is you're going beyond the general guidance that is available at the EU level, and you're using this project to find bespoke, locally appropriate and tailored solutions. We really count on you to do a good job and make sure that really you are able, at the end of this project, to see the pathway towards full implementation of the plan. I think one of the key actions that we particularly like in this project is your activities to develop a results-based agri-environment payment scheme. This is work that if it's successful, as we trust it will be, could serve as a great model for other parts of the EU and who knows, even beyond. This is important because a lot of the agri-environment schemes presently administered pay on the basis of meeting sort of requirements for doing certain types of actions. Here instead, what you're going to be piloting is a scheme where the quality of the desired environmental outcomes is the basis of the payment. And this can certainly be a win-win solution where we improve our environment, we improve our agriculture, and we improve the conditions for the people who are working in the area, be it foresters, be it agricultural workers. I think it's very important to underline what was already mentioned by Minister Noonan, and that this is a highly collaborative project. And this is what's going to make it a success. You have the involvement of local authorities, you have the involvement of workers, you have the involvement of the landowners. You're going to be collaborating also with the Integrated Nature Project on Wild Atlantic. This means you're going to come up with solutions that really work on the ground. You're going to come up with solutions that work for all of you, for all of the different stakeholders. You're going to build the capacity and the ownership of all the people in the catchment area to make it a success. So certainly you're on the right path. Certainly you're headed the right way. We selected your project because we believe it will be a success. And I can now only wish you all the best. There's going to be hard work ahead of you. We're there to keep supporting you along the way. But good luck and hope everything goes really, really well. Thank you.
So Minister Noonan and Barrel have given you an overview of the aims and objectives generally of the Waters of Life project. As the Minister said, there are 16 partners involved in the project, in addition to the Department of Housing, Local Government and Heritage, and they are the Environmental Protection Agency, the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine, Coillte, Teagasc, and I'm forgetting one. Did I mention LawPro? LawPro, EPA, Department of Agriculture, the Forest Service, that's the one I was forgetting, Teagasc and Coillte, sorry, along with 10 local development companies. The OPW is also involved in the project as a co-financer. Both of our previous speakers have talked about the objective to improve our understanding of high-status objective water bodies and to introduce locally tailored solutions to sectoral issues in those catchments. They've also mentioned that we'll have a results-based agricultural payment scheme. Now, I suppose it's important to say that this isn't really breaking new ground in Ireland. We have very long history, or relatively long history, of very successful results-based agricultural payment schemes, such as the Burn Project, the Pearl Mussel Project, the Hen Harrier Project, more recently the Wild Atlantic Nature Integrated Project. But what might be a little bit different about the Waters of Life is that we'll be specifically targeting water quality and maybe working in areas that are a little bit more intensively farmed than one might normally associate with results-based agricultural payment schemes. So at this point, a number of subcatchments have been proposed for inclusion in the project. 5 of these will be active demonstration catchments, and the 6th will be effectively a control, where water quality will be monitored and where land use change will be monitored, and where we'll also engage with local communities to raise awareness of the importance of these resources. But there won't be active interventions on the ground in the 6th catchment. At this point, as I said, we've selected the 5 catchments. The Minister mentioned the CAP strategic plan. As you know, under the CAP strategic plan, there's proposals for cooperation area projects which will target priority environmental assets, and these include high status objective water bodies. The map here shows the overlap between the cooperation projects and high status subcatchments containing high status objective water bodies. The areas in light blue are the high status objective subcatchments that are outside of the cooperation areas. So a very large number of the high status objective water bodies, approximately 3/4 of them, are within cooperation areas. So that the need to avoid duplication and the need to add value to the CAP strategic plan has led us to choose our catchments from outside the cooperation areas. So the choice was to some extent constrained. Another criteria that was applied when we were selecting the catchments was that they form a fairly coherent geographical unit, so that you have most of the catchment area was either high status objective or inputting into high status objective water bodies. So once we'd gone through that process, we were left with a relatively small number to choose from. 3 of those are chosen for, and I should say when we avoided the CAP areas, the cooperation areas, it was for the catchments where we'd be exploring agricultural pressures. That criteria didn't apply outside for the other pressures, such as forestry in particular. There we were guided by Coillte and for the Forest Service in terms of identifying catchments where there were high status water bodies, they were at risk, and there was likely to be significant forestry activity during the life of the project, where it would give us the opportunity to explore issues around the management of legacy forestry, so historical forestry that wouldn't comply with current best practice, to look at how that can be managed in a way that minimises the impact on water quality and is consistent with the achievement of high status. So, wrong way. This map here shows the proposed catchments with the counties behind them. So there's a reasonably good geographical spread. The Western Seaboard is perhaps less well represented than we might have expected, but that's because most of the subcatchments and most of the high status objective water bodies there are in the cooperation projects. So I'm just now going to talk you through the individual catchments. The first demonstration area is a subcatchment of the Blackwater in County Cork. It's the Blackwater subcatchment 60. Now, we're not working to the strict boundary of this catchment as defined under the Water Framework Directive. We've enlarged it slightly to include one inputting water body. The total area of this demonstration catchment is about 80 square kilometres. Sorry, I forgot to change it when I added in the other water body. The one water body here was at high status, but it's fallen to good status for the last 2 monitoring cycles, so is at risk of not meeting its objectives under the Water Framework Directive. It's got a mix of poorly draining and free draining soil, so it'll offer the opportunity to explore a wide range of measures in an agricultural context. And the main pressures in this catchment are agriculture and hydromorphology, which relates to the flow and form of the river. The next demonstration catchment then is the Lee subcatchment 60 in County Cork. This is the subcatchment of the river known as the Shorenuck. This catchment has a range of significant pressures acting on it. It's got agriculture, hydromorphology, urban wastewater, domestic wastewater, and it's also an area for action, an OPW area for action. So we'll be looking at trialling some natural water retention measures in this catchment as well. And you'll see at the bottom of each of these, it shows the number of herd numbers in each catchment, so the number of potential landowners who can get involved in each of these areas. The next one is the SUC 20 subcatchment, which is the subcatchment of the Island River, and this straddles the Galway-Roscommon border. So about 2/3 of the catchment is in Galway and the other third is in Roscommon. This again is quite a large catchment, 145 square kilometres. It's fallen, there's only one high status objective water body in this subcatchment, but it's at the downstream end of the subcatchment, so anything that happens upstream in the subcatchment is relevant to that high status water body, and so it's important that we work on those water bodies as well. The high status water body has fallen to good status in the last monitoring cycle. The significant pressure on that water body is cited as urban wastewater, but we know through work that LawPro has done that agriculture and hydromorphology in the upstream water bodies is also having an impact. This catchment has a high proportion of poorly drained and peat soils, so we were looking to get a spread of different types of soils to explore different types of measures. This catchment then is the Graney subcatchment 20, I think, in, yes, Graney subcatchment 20 in County Clare. This is on the Clare-Galway border. This one is largely within a cooperation area, but this is one where we'll be looking at forestry primarily, and that is the only significant pressure acting in this subcatchment. There are 3 high-status objective water bodies in this subcatchment. At the moment, only one of those is meeting that objective. The last of our active catchments is the Avonmore subcatchment 10 in County Wicklow. This has 2 high-status objective water bodies, both of which have fallen to good status in recent times. However, one of the water bodies in the catchment has risen to high status and has been at high status for 2 monitoring cycles now. So it's quite likely that this will be assigned a high status objective in the next River Basin Management Plan. The pressures in this catchment are forestry and agriculture, but again, this one is within a cooperation area, so we'll just be focusing on the results-based agriculture, on the forestry, and not introducing the results-based agricultural payment scheme in this catchment. So that's our 5 active catchments. The demonstration catchment, we were very constrained in the choice of catchments to act as the control. There were only 4 candidate subcatchments where you had a significant number of water bodies at high status in the long term and not at risk. Of those 4, 3 were in County Cork, and we felt we'd enough in County Cork. We needed to get out of the place. So this one is in South County Kerry. It's the Sheen 10 catchment. It's an area of 100 square kilometres. 1 water body is unassigned, so we don't know what status that is at currently, but the majority of the catchment is at high status and is considered not to be at risk and has been steadily at high status in the longer term. Here, as I said previously, we won't be introducing active interventions on the ground, but we will be working in the catchment to monitor water quality, to monitor land use change to see how that impacts on water quality, and working to raise awareness with the local communities. In terms of what the next steps are in the project, LawPro, who are a project partner, are currently undertaking desk studies on the selected catchments. Those are due to be finished next month. In July, currently RPS have been engaged to develop a framework of measures and best practice guidance for high status objective water bodies. So they've effectively reviewed literature and projects that have looked at high status water bodies both in Ireland and abroad, and developed this document to guide us as to how to carry on various sectoral activities within those catchments with a view to not causing them to fall below high status where they're currently at high status, or to bring them back to high status where they've fallen below. That document will be published in July, and hopefully it will be a very practical document that will be very usable and of great use to practitioners. We'll be beginning the initial community engagement in the demonstration catchments in June of this year, and by April 2023 we'll have completed that process, completed the initial and more detailed field investigations, and hopefully have developed our strategic catchment management plans. In tandem with all of this, the results-based agricultural payment scheme will be developed, and we hope that the framework for that would be developed by the end of this year. During 2023, we'll be engaging with advisors, both agricultural advisors, forestry advisors, to provide training. We'll be engaging with landowners to provide training, and the results-based agricultural payment scheme, as well as implementation of other measures on the ground, will begin at the beginning of 2024 and run to about the first quarter 2028. So that's really all I wanted to say. We have a large number of partners and also a large number of other stakeholders. As Minister Noonan said, if you just focus on the environment, you don't really achieve very much. You have to look at it in the overall context of sustainability, in its broadest sense. So we'll be looking at sustainability in terms of social sustainability, economic sustainability, cultural sustainability, as well as environmental sustainability. And I'm very much looking forward to working with you all on that in the coming years. So thank you very much for listening. Our next speaker is Dr. Bernie White, who is the manager of the Blue Dot programme in Loughborough.
I'm too short to speak into the microphone, so I'm going to have to hold it, excuse me. So thank you, Anne. As Anna said, I'm Bernie White. I work with the Local Authority Waters Programme as a regional coordinator. And as part of that job, I also manage the Blue Dot Catchments Programme. And I just want to thank Anne for inviting us here today, and we're delighted to be partners with Anne on the Waters of Life, and we look forward to working very closely with her going forward. So I thought we might take a little look back, first of all, before looking forward in relation to this. And where did it all start? And Minister Noonan has already referenced the significant decline that we've had in our high status waters over the last number of decades. So the EPA were very concerned about this back in 2010, and they provided funding for a desk study to look at what management strategies would we put in place to be able to protect our high status waters. And within that particular document, there are multiple strategies proposed, but as a vehicle to deliver these strategies, it was proposed that a Blue Dot Catchments programme would be established. And that was really just to provide, as I said, the vehicle for delivery and to provide a focus for all of the actions that would be required to reverse that significant decline. And at the time, and some of my co-authors that worked with me at the time, we stressed that urgent action was required to be able to reverse the decline because it had been so significant throughout the 90s and the early 2000s. So again, Mr. Noonan has referenced the figures in relation to the decline, but when you look at it in this particular graphic, it's quite stark. But there is hope when you can look at the more recent assessment from 2017 to 2020. And we can see that the numbers have actually increased in that time period in terms of our high status objective water bodies. And that's good news, and hopefully we can keep that trend going. It is a very significant challenge. As has been mentioned, the water bodies are quite sensitive to any changes with land use and so on. So it does take that concerted long-term effort to be able to reverse and sustain that decline. Anne has mentioned really that a lot of these high status waters, these Blue Dot waters, tend to be concentrated along the western seaboard. And that's something that we looked at actually in that strategies document, how we would actually establish a more coherent network of high status water bodies across the country. And there may be some areas across the country there that are not blue at the moment, but that we might have an ambition to deliver some blue dots into the future. And certainly working with local authorities, I know they have a great deal of ambition to actually deliver that on the ground. So one of the principal actions then, if we look at the second cycle river basin management plan, was to establish the Blue Dot Catchment Programme and to bring into being a working group or a steering group of all the relevant stakeholders, and that we would appoint a dedicated Blue Dot coordinator. And Cormac McGonigal was appointed as our Blue Dot coordinator, and as a gift to Anne, he's going to be transferring to her to be the project ecologist working with her. So I'd like to thank Cormac as well for all of his work on the Catchment Programme. So the steering group was set up in late 2018. As you can see there's quite a number of public bodies, departments, ourselves, EPA, etc. on the group. Many people are in the audience here from the steering group today, and I welcome their contributions over the last number of years. We provide the secretariat there, and that was largely our role up to now. and including feeding into that group our own finding through our priority areas for action work, the work from our own community water officers on the ground, engaging with communities and so on. But ultimately the goal of that particular group was to provide focused deployment of resources, so to pool all of our resources, to pool our different policies, procedures, strategies, funding mechanisms to be able to focus and prioritise in blue dot areas. And ultimately to deliver a long-term strategy for protection. And that's ultimately what Anne's project will deliver, and we'll work hand in glove with Anne in the Blue Dot Catchments programme. We had our own work programme that we established in 2019, and it had multiple objectives. So I'm just going to give you a little flavour of some of the things that we've worked on up to now. In the first 5 objectives here, we focused on, what is our vision? How are we going to brand the programme? You can see we have our new pull-up here at the back of the room and in the hall as well. And we looked at developing a strategy for engaging with communities in these areas, because ultimately, we in this room now know what a blue dot is. It's a high status water body, but mostly communities don't know that they're living in these very important areas, these pristine areas. So how do we get over that by increasing awareness, increasing participation, and also to look to establish pilot projects in these areas. So the vision, it's a long one, but it's all-encompassing, and a lot of the elements of it have been touched on already this morning. We sat down with a number of different stakeholders back in March 2020, actually our last big engagement as it happens before COVID hit, so we were lucky to get it in. But some of the words that they brainstormed that day that they felt were associated with these areas can be seen in the word cloud here. So climate, protect, integrated, pride of place, valuing our communities, resilience, and so on. So they're very strong and very powerful words. So we want to collaborate with local communities to protect and improve our pristine waters so that the benefits to biodiversity, our health and well-being, our heritage and the climate can be enjoyed by the current and future generations. Okay. Part of that, as I said, is spreading the word about where these areas are, why they're important, and so on. So some of the work we've been doing in terms of developing the branding of the programme is that we have an ambition that we would have signage in all of these blue dot areas across the country. And we'll be starting hopefully with that pilot phase of work this summer in Mayo and in other areas, and I'm sure probably in the Waters of Life catchment areas as well. But we already have one example in Wicklow, in the Avamore, which is one of the demonstration catchment areas, where we've worked closely, our catchment scientists have worked closely in that particular priority area for action to increase awareness, not only of the area being a blue dot, but also that it's an Natura 2000 area and so on. So there's many synergies there that can be achieved. We work with our Community Water Development Fund, and these are just some information from the fund from this particular year. That fund was brought into being in 2018, and we've increased funding there of 380,000 this year. Within the applications, we do prioritise applications that come in from blue dot areas, and this year there was a launch of a Blue Dot Award, which is an additional €10,000 for those areas. So again, it's getting the messages out there about these areas and their importance. As always, it's oversubscribed with over €1 million being sought for that particular pot. So who knows, maybe we can continue to improve that in the years to come. One really important initiative that has happened in recent times is bespoke water and biodiversity training, which has been delivered in collaboration with the LEADER programme. And in those areas, we have looked to put in place additional training for communities with the view that they might develop projects in those particular areas that they're delivering the training in. So there are multiple rural development companies involved, and I know IRD Duhallow, not too far away from here, are involved. In our own area, my own area in the west, for example, we Forum Connemara and Galway Rural Development involved as well. But that looks at water literacy, and that's one thing that the community water officers have found while being out on the ground. The awareness about water, the issues that impact on water, and what they can do about it isn't always to the level that you might expect. So that's something that's really important to continue to improve upon. Citizen science is part of that, and as I said, the development of local plans and projects and networking. So within those areas, and I'm going to pick on Conor Ruan, who's here in the audience, and he's delivered some training in Connemara and East Galway. You can see in East Galway there was a programme delivered, and also in Connemara. Now, when you go to East Galway and you look at the list of areas that were chosen to deliver the training, we could only get one blue dot really that was suitable. So there's a dearth of blue dots in that side of the county. When you go to Connemara, it's a different story. So we need to protect what we have on the western side of Galway, for example, and seek to improve things on the eastern side of Galway. And one of the demonstration catchments, the island, is on that side of the county. So again, an awareness of blue dots has been increased through the training programme. The second batch of objectives that we had then are more technical, more scientific, maybe more strategic in nature. So I'm going to touch off Objective 7 there, influencing national schemes and programmes. And as I mentioned, a lot of our steering group members are involved in the delivery of these programmes, involved in the formulation of the programmes, and their input is highly important to be able to prioritise these sensitive areas. So some of this has already been mentioned, and I'm not going to read everything on this slide, I will be here all day, but the CAP strategic plan has been mentioned specifically, and getting the bulk of our blue dots into those cooperation areas, I feel is a very significant milestone. I look forward to all of the work and working closely with the cooperation projects once they're up and running. The Waters EIP is something that's been discussed at the moment between the Department of Agriculture, Department of Housing and Teagasc and ASAP, the Agricultural Sustainability Support and Advisory Programme. And that particular project could allow us to deliver additional tailored and targeted measures in various parts of the country, including in blue dot areas, those ones that might sit outside the cooperation project areas and where we might need specific interventions. Also to mention maybe there the Irish Water Capital Investment Programme, and we've had significant support from Irish Water on our steering group as well. It may be a lesser pressure in these areas, but it is important that we deal with those pressures as well. So one thing that they prioritised recently was an application to the EU Recovery and Resilience Facility, and they delivered a River Basin Management Plan Enhanced Ambition Programme, and that actually includes the island, within the island demonstration catchment, the Ballymoe Certificate of Authorisation, and a process to deal with that specific pressure in that demonstration catchment. So that's a significant delivery there. We also work very closely with Rural Water in the department and also with the National Federation of Group Water Schemes in terms of prioritising work within their particular drinking water areas for protection. So one of the things the department brought in was a specific grant. If you live in a high status catchment area, you can apply, you can self-declare if you would like to upgrade your wastewater, your domestic wastewater treatment plant. So that's a significant grant, and we'd like to probably improve the awareness about that grant and hopefully increase the uptake of it as well. Just to say finally, looking forward then, we have our draft River Basin Management Plan that will come into being hopefully from September forwards. But what we've worked on with LawPro within the regional operational committees that are within our governance structure for River Basin implementation is increasing the number of blue dots that will be within our areas for action. So that's where we'll have targeted and focused interventions to be able to deliver improvements and indeed protection, because some of these areas will be areas for protection. So almost 80% of our blue dots are within those areas for action now for the third cycle. But the key to all of this has been mentioned a few times is integrated catchment planning. So also proposed in that plan is 46 catchment management plans. And we would like to integrate the blue dots within all of those plans so that each blue dot water body will have its own action plan over the course of the next cycle of the river basin management. And of course, increased ambition is something that's clearly set out in the plan as well. That will include more focused implementation, compliance and enforcement as well, along with working together with communities, as already has been pointed out. So I'll just leave it at that and say that the contact point is now me and not Cormac, if you've been emailing Cormac up to now. Just my email address and contact phone number there. And we also have a specific section on our Local Authority Waters Programme website on the Blue Dot Programme. So if there's anything at all you wish to discuss, just get in contact. We'd welcome it. Thank you.
Thanks, Bernie, for that very comprehensive overview of the Blue Dot Programme. And that brings us to our next speaker, who is Derek McLaughlin. And Derek is the project manager on the Wild Atlantic Nature Life IP.
Minister Noonan, ladies and gentlemen, or I should say everybody, it's fantastic to be here. Delighted to be asked. Thank you very much. It's hard to follow Bernie and of course. I will say something with Bernie and her approach in terms of, we're talking about water here primarily today, but I'm primarily coming at this from a biodiversity perspective and all of the associated co-benefits of that. But over the years, we would have worked quite closely together with broader LawPro, with ASAP, and whether your objectives are in water quality or in biodiversity or climate, they're all the same, and they ought to be the same. And Bernie mentioned integrated approaches here as well, and that's something that's really, really important. I'm the project manager of Life IP, Wild Atlantic Nature, which is obviously another integrated life project, and the key focus of that are blanket bogs. But you can't go and protect blanket bogs unless you protect the systems that are in place in these areas, the policies that influence what happens on these, the forestry, the water quality, and so on. So it's part of an integrated whole approach here as well. And when we talk about the word integrated project, but I think, I know we're moving to this idea of they're called strategic projects now and so on, and that's all very well. But integrated is something that's really, really important to bear in mind. We think about water, but we need to think about biodiversity as part of the water, as part of a deliverable, as part of this. We need to think about climate. We need to think about culture, and all of these things have been mentioned. But it's really important that we, in our positions, I think, Anne, as managers of these projects, think broadly about what's being delivered here. I would say from the people side of things and the integration of that, it's about integration within sections of the same department, of understanding what others do within your government department, with what's happening within other government departments, be that agriculture or heritage or whatever it might be, and integration between those government departments and communities, farmers, farm organisations and so on, and that's extremely important. We're from the position of the Life Integrated projects, it puts us in a position of kind of being the gel, or almost like being probably having a diplomatic passport to transcend all of the various boundaries and all of the different, we call them silos was the popular word for it a couple of years ago, or last year, maybe it's something else now, but it's about penetrating those barriers between the different groups, from community groups right the way through to the highest level as well, and that's really important. So in a lot of ways we're like this kind of gel in these projects, particularly the integrated projects. We're about a year older than our sister project here, Waters of Life in Wild Atlantic Nature, and I feel that the flexibility from the Commission's perspective in running these is very good. Everybody wants to see them succeed. I've found the support within the department from the highest level, including yourself, Minister, has been excellent. There's a huge will for these projects to succeed, and they will succeed as well. A really interesting aspect to this, and it was mentioned earlier on, is the complementary funding aspects of these projects, in that a traditional life project is a set of actions, and we have those as well in our integrated projects. But the complementary funding projects are really interesting because there's a lot of will, there's a lot of community groups, department organisations and so on that seek to implement or have nice ideas or good ideas that can feed in here. And integrated projects, Waters of Life, or Wild Atlantic Nature, we all form a really good practice partner to facilitate those complementary funding projects and assist in supporting those and developing those and integrating them into broader policy as well. So that's really exciting. It's a really exciting space to be in because this is new in an Irish context. One example in Wild Atlantic Nature, we have a whole suite of actions, including the development of a results-based programme as well this year, and particularly developing capacity for these cooperation projects, and we've been working a lot on that over the last year or so. We've got currently about 800 farmers that are in our programme or coming into our programme, in the process of it at least. But one that comes to mind is a a complementary funding project that we're running in near Leenane in County Mayo. It's on the border of Mayo and Galway. It's in the Delphi Valley, and its focus is the control of rhododendron. But it's a community-led project. It was one in which local farmers came to us, said, we want to do something about this. We could put a proposal together. We put a proposal together as such with the broader community. We sought additional funding. We were successful and through the, I think, the foresight of yourself, Minister, in funding that as a seed fund. With the support of various different state organisations there, the community has developed that. The farmers have been trained there along with other community representatives. And for a relatively small amount of money, there's a really good model of a community-led project there that builds capacity to understand the implications of something like rhododendron. It could be applied to a lot of other aspects, but that is a long-lasting capacity. That is something that's there long after we leave town, and that's something that's really important, an important feature of these projects as well. That's the complementary aspect to it. I will, I suppose, to conclude, say that these projects aren't the silver bullet. They're not actually the solution. But what they are is that they are the opportunity to find the solution. It's about integration is a kind of a technical, awful word, but it's about collaboration, and it's about an approach of knocking our heads together, of transcending the boundaries between levels, vertical and horizontal or whatever way, and coming up with solutions, and having the courage of your convictions to propose new projects and drive on with those, because in my experience there is a very strong will there. I'm very lucky with those around me, my colleagues, Andy Bleasdale and Barry O'Donoghue and others in National Parks and Wildlife Service and our colleagues across waters. So that's what I really say is that the opportunities are here and they're very, very exciting. And to conclude, I would like to offer the best of luck to the really exciting project we've worked together, I think, Anne, since you've started. It's very exciting, the compatibility between the two, perhaps the national spread of our two projects, and that is, I think, is really, really exciting in itself. That I think come the next CAP cycle that we will have a very, very strong approach towards agri-environment, towards community and culture, and knitting that into the culture. So thank you very much and the very best of luck.
Thank you very much, Derek. That brings the formal part of the morning to a close. So I'd just like to say thank you to our speakers and to Minister Noonan and to all of you for coming along. But I also want to say a huge thank you to my colleagues in LawPro who put so much effort into making sure today was a success and ran smoothly. And also to Ballyhowra Development, who are going to be helping us out later with the next part of our morning. So that brings me to our field trips. We have two field trips this morning. One is to the Keel River Walk, known locally as the Molana. And that's a 6-kilometre riverside walk that runs between Ballyorgan and Dara, in County Cork actually, but we don't mind that. This walk was developed by Ballyhowra Development in partnership with the local landowners, and it was achieved through goodwill. The landowners received no payment for providing or allowing the walkway across their land. And the reason for taking you here today, apart from the fact that it's a really nice walk, I think this is a really wonderful example of ecosystem services and multiple benefits. It's a much used and well-loved local amenity that benefits health and well-being. It's a corridor for wildlife, and it's also a buffer that protects the river. And I think really it's time to start a conversation about those services, those ecosystem services, and those public goods that the land can provide other than food and commercial crops. And to ask ourselves, what's the value we as a society place on those goods and services, and how do we incentivise and reward farmers for providing them and not just rely on goodwill. Ballyhowra Development staff, as I've said, have kindly offered to lead the walks today. So they'll be able to tell you about the history and development of the walk, and also about the Parish Habitats and Biodiversity Mini EIP, which Ballyhour is currently running in the area. And I think all of you will see, I thought it was just going to be one group, but all of you are going to see a very beautiful piece of eco art along the walkway.
And I actually felt there was so much going on there visually that it needed that kind of calm and quiet. And also what I wanted, you don't get the impact when you're a group, but when you walk on your own and you come round that bend or over that little hill, it's like seeing a stag. You know, it's that kind of, oh my God, what's that big being that's there? So I wanted that.
To keep numbers manageable, we have two groups. So one bus will be going to the Ballyorgan end, and the other to the Dara end. You'll both walk about halfway. The ones from the Dara end will go a bit further to see the artwork, and then you'll walk up a farm passageway to the road where the buses will collect you and bring you back for lunch. Our second field trip is to the Luba catchment. The Luba is the river that runs through Kilmallock here, and it rises further up in the Ballyhowers. The Luba, or the Upper Luba, has a good status objective under the Water Framework Directive, and is currently meeting that objective and has consistently met that objective. But where we're going today is upstream of the Water Framework Directive monitoring site, to two sites. One is called Highbridge and the other is called Ponafercha. And recent sampling carried out there by Limerick City and County Council staff would suggest that the status in the upper reaches of the Upper Luba is even better, that it's possibly high status. Now, we won't be assigning status today, only the EPA can do that, but we will be taking a look to see what the biology of these sites is telling us about the status up there. And what's interesting is, I think there's sometimes a perception that for good or high water quality, you need to sterilise the environment, you need wild areas, you need to unduly restrict land use. The upper reaches of the Luba are hives of activity. There's a lot of forestry that's currently being harvested. There's a thriving agricultural sector. There's several towns. And I think the message is that these things can go ahead within catchments. We can have thriving communities and economies, provided we take into consideration the conditions within the catchment and match the way we carry out our activities to those conditions. And those are questions that the Waters of Life and issues the Waters of Life will be exploring. So with that, I'd like to say thank you again, and all you have to do now is put on your boots, and not your waterproofs, as we said, but your sunscreen, and make your way to the buses which will be waiting outside for you.